Today, I have the pleasure of hosting Ann-Elise Quinn, a 2015 graduate of the MA program in Statecraft and National Security Affairs at the Institute of World Politics. So Ann-Elise, you are currently a research analyst with Thomson Reuters Special Services, and I understand that you're a subject matter expert in human rights crimes pertaining to forced labor and the goods produced through forced labor, and that you're supporting different law enforcement clients. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your work and the issues that you're dealing with.
Sure. So I think you and I have talked recently and in depth about some of the most challenging problems that I've been dealing with, and the United States as well, particularly the situation in Xinjiang, China. We have, as the United States, enacted a series of law enforcement actions and laws in order to combat, to take a stand really against a lot of what we view as human rights crimes that are occurring in Xinjiang, China. Many people have been placed in re-education camps against their will. There have been stories of people placed in prison. Many people that, like our Uyghur people that live in the United States at this point, haven't heard from their family in Xinjiang. Many of them that I have spoken to fear that they are never going to hear from their parents, their brothers and sisters, their loved ones again, just because of the policies that the Chinese government has enacted in order to, in their view, create an ideal society within Xinjiang. Unfortunately, some of the things that have been part of this policy are to set Uyghurs to work in manufacturing sites, in factories, sometimes in Xinjiang, and sometimes we believe in other parts of China. And since we as the United States cannot really go into China and save these people, or really prevent any of those types of policies that they are enacting. The thing that we can do is prevent those goods from being sold in the U.S. Because it's been a fairly bipartisan effort, as I've talked to you about earlier. Both Republicans and Democrats have said that we don't want these goods. We don't want goods produced from forced labor, from prison labor, to be sold in the United States. And United States citizens do not want to put their hard-earned money towards these actions, towards making them profitable. So what a lot of my efforts have been lately, and a lot of my focus has been to figure out these supply chains that are connected to Xinjiang. That, supply chain has been another big buzzword lately, just how complicated they are, even when they are going well, even when there's not forced labor in them. There are often many different links in a chain that connects, the T-shirt that you bought from where you bought it, say at Ross or wherever, to the original creator, the original maker of the cotton fields. So due to that complexity, we have been trying to sort out what supply chains actually are connected to China, what supply chains are connected specifically to Xinjiang, so that we can prevent those goods from coming into the U.S., hopefully preemptively.
So Ann-Elise, these sound like such important issues that you're working on. As an analyst, what does your day look like? What does a typical day at work look like?
I guess the thing that I enjoy most is there's not always a typical day. I get to look at a lot of different topics. For one thing, not everything is Xinjiang. I do look at that topic quite frequently. It's been a constant for me for probably the last 3 or 4 years now. But there are many other aspects of supply chain. There's unfortunately many other aspects of human trafficking as well. And so those are some of the topics that I get into. I think that my company does like to do is also look out for new technologies, new data sets, new possibilities, new projects that we can pick up. And so I am frequently looking out for new information, for new projects, new problem sets that I haven't thought of before. So one aspect that I haven't really delved into quite as much is antiquities trafficking, which is a supply chain issue, but it's a little bit more of it's not necessarily connected to like one area like Xinjiang. It can be coming from anywhere in the world where there are these historic goods. A big one lately has been Syria. Due to the civil war there, many of the historic items, antiquities, those are being looted by oftentimes bad actors. Sometimes they are just people that are trying to feed their families, trying to sell something that they have found in order to benefit their families. But sometimes those goods end up going towards funding terrorist actions or other actions that we just don't condone or shouldn't condone. Beyond that, oftentimes these goods are illegally taken. They are part of the cultural heritage of a country. So we want to make sure that they stay within the country and ideally maybe make it to a museum. So that's one thing that we've been thinking about, like how do we build that out more? It is in some ways maybe even more challenging than some of the other supply chain problems, because if you have this tiny little, I don't know, like tiny little pot or something like that, and I didn't tell you that I dug it up in my backyard or wherever it was, like, how are you going to trace that? Mm-hmm. So, like, those are some of the problems that we have coming up, or we're thinking about just among some of our analytic friends. So, typically though, we'll have a request that will come in from our client, and we'll do our best to game out how we're going to address that, and provide a report, provide network analysis, maybe provide a data tool if that is actually the thing that they need. So, and usually we'll build from there, because every time we do something, we learn a little bit more, and then we build upon that body of knowledge. So maybe we can help the client with the same sort of project later, or we can help a new client, usually government client. But sometimes we have our private clients that we help as well. So every day is new. So there's not really like a set humdrum day, I guess. So,
Ann-Elise, how can regular people avoid buying goods that are produced through forced labor? I know that you're working on this legislation, which will make it easier for us. But in the meantime, what can we do?
That's a big question that I would like to answer for people. It's I sympathize most with small businesses with trade laws like this that are put into place, because most of them want to do the right thing. They don't want to be contributing towards forced labor. They don't want to be buying goods, certainly, that are linked to forced labor or human trafficking at all. But they don't necessarily have the same tools that a large company or the federal government certainly has. They don't have a team of analysts. They don't have a huge data set or so much money to put towards that particular problem, that supply chain risk problem. But the thing that I do recommend that people do is have a conversation with your suppliers. This is more on the small business side. Ask them how they are sourcing things, where is this coming from? And if they are not getting a good answer, then maybe it's a good idea not to source from that particular supplier. For people, for individuals, I think it's a good idea. It's obviously not all on you to clean up the American supply chain, though I do encourage people to talk to their congresspeople, to talk to companies that they do business with, ask them what they are doing to ensure that their supply chains are free of these goods. I also encourage people to educate themselves on the topic. If there are particular goods that are frequently coming up in the news as linked to forced labor, it's a good idea to educate yourself on that and, maybe think twice before purchasing it. So, often in the case of Xinjiang, of course, any goods that are coming from Xinjiang at this point are not permitted in the United States, with certain exceptions, if there is proof that there is no forced labor associated with the good. But cotton, tomatoes, and polysilicon products, polysilicon being a key component of many solar panels. Those are the ones that the U.S. government has primarily targeted in these actions lately. So if you do have any good that you're purchasing that has any of those components in them, it's a good idea to check out, where did this originally come from? So that's not going to be foolproof because, as I said, supply chains are very complicated. So at the same time, if it's a private individual, I also say, I'll cut you some slack. I know that your heart is in the right place. So nine hops down the supply chain, if it does happen to be connected to something, not fault you for that. But I might fault a large company that has all of the resources to figure it out.
So if, say I want to go home and educate myself on these topics, what would be the best way for me to do that?
So I would look at certainly CBP's Office of Trade, their sites. There are a series of WROs, which are withhold and release orders. Those are goods that Customs and Border Protection have deemed that maybe we don't want in the United States. Maybe they need to be looked at with greater scrutiny before they are allowed to be allowed entry into the United States. They're not all China. There are actually a series of other goods in there that people can educate themselves on and assess. There are also plenty of NGOs out there that do focus on these topics. So Amnesty International does have a good series of articles on forced labor specifically. They, of course, cover an array of human rights issues, but forced labor is a main one. Yes, I think, honestly, in some ways, a Google search you will come across a plethora of information out there. Who else could I recommend? Karen, Kharon. They have been they're actually a data supplier, but they also have a series of good white papers on forced labor, and some of it specific to the UFLPA, the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. And I would also recommend Victims of Communism as well. So Dr. Adrian Zenz has a series of very good reports specific to China, but there is some relevancy to other parts of the world, applicability to other areas as well.
Mm-hmm. How did you become interested in these issues of human rights and supply chains originally?
Yeah, when I was first coming to IWP, I thought I was going to be much more of a counterterrorism or a Russia subject matter expert, because these were the directions I was going. And I did work on CT for the first bit of my career.
CT being counterterrorism for any of our listeners who don't know.
Yes. But really, it honestly got assigned to me in a way. Like, it wasn't necessarily anything that we knew was going to come up, but it was really what our client needed at the time. Further insight into supply chains, further insight into China and other areas of the world as well, specific to forced labor. So it's actually really something that I didn't know that I would be so passionate about, that I would care so much about. But sometimes things find you. Sometimes the subject finds you, and you find that you really love it. So
Awesome,
I guess it
Ann-Elise.
taught me how to be open to new topics. So
What do you feel is the biggest impact you've made so far in this work, if you can say? I don't know if you can say.
I mean, don't know if I can say specifically, but I do think I can say that I have contributed to the body of knowledge on forced labor within supply chain. So myself with many other people even within my own company. It's really been a topic that has been getting a lot more press than it has in previous years, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. Like some of the companies that are on this topic are competitors of ours, and so as much as I'm like, we could do that better than you. I always think, well, they are working on this. They are contributing towards something that is good. We are trying to make sure that we are not making these human rights crimes profitable, which I hope will contribute towards preventing them or mitigating them. But the least thing that we can do is not make them profitable.
Yeah.
So.
Well, good for you. That's awesome. If somebody's interested in these topics and wants to get into a career where they're studying these and also making a difference, what advice do you have for someone like that?
We'll come to the Institute of World Politics.
Of course.
First, I would say, when I first started on supply chain, I did have to look up supply chain to figure out a good definition of what that meant. Since then, I've gotten a supply chain management certificate. I've educated myself on that topic. I think that it's a good topic for anybody to be knowledgeable on, because if you are at all a consumer in the United States, which most of us are, unless you're completely off-grid, then supply chain touches you. And I think it's important to figure out where you fit into all of that, like how you are contributing towards it. So I'd recommend maybe looking into topics of trade. I'd recommend reading up on human rights, specifically forced labor, of course. And then, I don't know, honestly, trade is just a fascinating topic. The United States Commerce, Department of Commerce does have quite a good amount of reading on that. I would also recommend DHS's Office of Trade. They have a good amount of information on that as well. And then, honestly, steer your career towards that. If you are seeing that a career has something to do with supply chain, go for it.
You mentioned IWP, and I was planning to ask how grad school fit into your big picture. I understand you were doing paralegal work in estate and business planning before IWP, and then you just decided to completely pivot your career. And so I'd love to hear about that transition. What made you choose that? What made you choose IWP, and what was it like to just shift like that?
I think it's one of my instances where I felt most brave in a way, because yes, it was definitely a moment of upending my life, as it had been. I really did enjoy being an estate and business planning paralegal. I enjoyed our clients. They were generally very nice people, had very stable lives. They weren't litigious or anything. But I also figured out that unless I wanted to be an actual attorney, I had pretty much come to the end of my learning. Like I had pretty much covered all the ground that I was going to cover unless I wanted to do further education. And I knew that I didn't want to be an attorney, so no offense to attorneys out there, but
It wasn't your path.
Yeah, it wasn't my path. I also realized that I wasn't really on the path that I had originally wanted anyway. Like estate and business planning was kind of a thing that just happened to me, even though it's something that I am still very grateful for. I still keep in touch with my first boss. She's a lovely lady. But I wanted it to be something that I had chosen because I was passionate about it. And I'd always wanted to find a way to contribute to my country, to help people. And I had originally seen that as, I don't know, like some special agent or something like that out there. But in some ways, that's the view that a lot of people have of working for the government. Like you have a badge and all of this and you're kicking down doors, but it's actually mostly not that. Mm-hmm. And coming to IWP helped me to figure that out. So IWP, I did look around at other places in DC. I thought DC is the place to go if I want to learn about the government, if I want to change paths.
Because you came from California.
It was, California is a lovely place, but I was like, maybe I don't need to stay just here. And particularly if I want to work for the federal government. So IWP just kept coming up somehow. So maybe that's a good testament to the Google Analytics somehow. But it did just keep coming up. And so I submitted, I think it was first I said, okay, I want to come to this open house. And I planned a trip to come out to DC to visit a friend of mine who was going to Georgetown at the time, and visited Georgetown, a few others, and came to IWP as well. And it just felt like home, honestly.
Oh,
it did, like, to start with. And the course list is really what sold it too, because I was reading through, and like so many of the classes just seemed like something that I would want to do for fun. Mm-hmm. Like if I could just take a class and not even have it go towards a degree, I would take this class anyway. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it just kept coming up. I had a job interview with a government agency, and while at that time I did not get the job, they told me, like, oh, yeah, you're thinking about IWP? We're going to be down there next week, actually.
Oh, that's great.
Like, okay. But I guess that I am onto something here. So I submitted my application. I think the next day or two, I submitted the application. And then, of course, I got accepted, and I came out the next fall, which was fall 2013. Packed up my little Corolla, and with everything I decided to continue to own.
Did you drive across the country?
I drove across the country with my friend from Georgetown. She
Wow.
came out specifically to drive with me. Mm-hmm. And I had my cross-country adventure in 5 days. It was fast. Yeah, and it's been 10 years now, actually. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I still love living out here. So and it led to good things as well. So
has your I know you mentioned you did counterterrorism work before this. Was your education helpful in your counterterrorism work and then also in your current work?
Yes, very much so. So, I mean, we do have professors here that have worked in some or all of these particular of the fields that I touch on. And so that insight and that perspective, having their having had them go before me has definitely helped me to figure out what resources are out there. Who can I talk to? Like, I honestly can't emphasize enough how useful it has been to have a book, to have a website, to have those resources that they originally provided to us already in my back pocket. So I like, you have to build from there, obviously, but you already have a place to start from. I would actually, so your father, Dr. Linchowski, there's actually indirectly, he provided me with a resource on the forced labor issue. So Dr. Harry Wu had a large body of research on the Laogai network of prisons in China. And so I was able to read up on his congressional testimony, his research, and I'm not sure that I would have necessarily known that that type of research was out there. It's like something available to me if I hadn't come here and heard about, because it's a little bit more of a niche sort of area. But I know that Dr. Elland, he had knew each other. So
that's awesome. Did you use IWP Career Services while you were here?
I did.
Okay. Was it helpful?
Derek, so I will say the thing that Derek helped me with a bit, like quite a bit actually, my internship. I'm not exactly sure how he did it. So I was supposed to be an intern at the Croatian embassy for State Department. I think summer of 2014. And except these are not paid internships. And yeah, I just was crunching the numbers and there was no way I could take 3 months away and not be making money. And so he said, well, you have the internship, you have the clearance and that's associated with it and all that. Let me see if I can talk to people out there in the world, in State Department, to see if we can get this switched to something that's DC based. And I'm not sure how he did it, but he did. So I ended up with a DC based internship at State, and it was with an office called the Human Smuggling and Trafficking Center, which was an interagency sort of office, which is now defunct. But as it turns out, it did, I don't know, I guess it was a sort of a precognition, prescient sort of thing. Like the subject matter was human trafficking. It was forced labor in some ways. And so it ended up.
Wow. Yeah. So you've come full circle.
No, I really did. Like, I'm just like, I don't think Derek intended that, but he actually did me a really good turn in that way. Because some of the people that did work in that office, like I still know them now. They're still doing a lot of that same work. So it was very helpful as it turned out. So good job, Derek.
That's awesome. And for everyone who doesn't know, Derek Dorch is our Director of Career Services. And he's been at it for, I guess, over a decade.
He has. Wow.
So yeah, he continues. And it's been working. Did you do anything differently as a result of your IWP education at work that had you not had this education, you would have?
Well, like I say, I think like I had more resources, like I had more tools in my toolkit. And that actually includes people, people that are colleagues still that maybe I went to school with. Like I had a network then. I had former professors, former co-students that I can reach out to and ask questions of. I think it would have been possible for me to straight out come to DC and become an analyst, but it would have been, I think I would have been much more of a fish out of water in that case. I wouldn't have come with the amount of knowledge that I received here, for one, and the amount of knowledge that I can continue to receive. Because, like, for instance, like Dr. Hodakevich has been helpful to me on occasions. There was one time I was interested in learning about Russian tattoos and symbols and things like that. And he's like, I have a book about that. Let me help you. So like things like that. I know I have this network behind me now, and this body of knowledge that goes with it as well. So.
And I have one more advice question, which is advice for our new students here. How can they make the most of their IWP education during the, year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on what program they're in, that they're here?
It will go so fast and also slow at the same time because, because there will be so many things to take in and to learn and people to meet. I would say lean in, lean into, to use a tired phrase at this point. But if there's an opportunity to go take a tour of the Pentagon or Gettysburg, which is one of the things I did, or like something that you haven't done before, or a bit of knowledge that you have never run across before. Like I was doing Russian Black Widows for a little while, which hadn't been a topic that I had been familiar with at all. So I just delved into that particular topic. I still receive Google alerts on it every so often, actually. And definitely take advantage of the opportunity to meet your fellow students, because like I said, before, like that network, that can be with you for the rest of your life, the rest of your career. I'm still good friends with a lot of my fellow classmates, and they are also resources I've relied on for jobs, for advice, for all of these things. So,
well, Ann-Elise, thank you so much for talking with me today. Thank you for everything that you've done for IWP over the years. For anyone who doesn't know, Ann-Elise is a master event planner and has planned a huge reunion for us in coordination with some other alumni, but she was a main planner and so many other events as well, both on the alumni board and Student Government Association way back when. So thank you, Ann-Elise. It was awesome to see you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, Katie.